Hey guys, it's me, Sonia. I figured that it's Thursday. Well, actually, it's probably Friday now, and it's time to do my story time. I think I missed story time last week, so it's about time. So today's story is going to be about something that's been on my mind for a while. And it's also going to kind of explain why I became a doula and why I don't trust hospitals. I know a lot of people, specifically Black people, they feel like, you're supposed to go to a hospital to birth your baby. You're supposed to do this, you're supposed to do that. But when you think back on the history of Black people in hospitals, we didn't mix well. First off, we weren't allowed in hospitals, so we had to find ways to deliver our children. And there became women who specialized in delivering children because we weren't allowed in hospitals. And they were called granny midwives. Um, Keep that in mind. Also, in African countries, name any country in Africa, they have women dedicated to delivering children. That is their only job, to deliver healthy children and take care of the mother. That's their job. That's it. So of course, us here in the US, taking care of mothers and newborns and delivering children was nothing new. We weren't allowed into hospitals. We weren't allowed to have health care and all these things. Now, present day, it seems like going to the hospitals is the best thing. A bunch of Black women are running into hospitals because they feel that's the safest place for them, forgetting all about the fact that we weren't allowed into hospitals, back in the day. And even if you get a young doctor, they've most likely been taught and trained under an older doctor, someone that was around before the civil rights movement, someone that was trained by somebody who was around before the civil rights movement may have a strong bias against Black people. Just putting it out there. Or their instructors in college could have had a bias, or they could have been raised in a household with a bias. And I'm not saying this is for all people. I'm not saying this is just for Black people, because there are some Middle Easterns, um, people that have biases against us. They have biases against us. But once again, who taught them to have that bias? I'm just going to leave that there. Um, so, this is my story on why I don't trust hospitals and why I became a doula. So, story time. Enjoy. So, when I was younger, I had to go to the hospital a lot. As mentioned in a few videos before or somewhere in rambling, that I was a preemie and I was born with a couple of health conditions. When I was born, I wasn't breathing, so they had me on all type of ventilators and things of that sort. And so the first 2 months of my life, I was in the hospital with all these tubes and stuff. And when I came home, I had a nanny, and my nanny was a trained nurse, and she had some background in education or something like that. I don't know, but she did not do what she was supposed to do as a nanny or a nurse. I had certain medications that I need to take, wasn't taking them. She smoked in the house with me, and I had underdeveloped lungs. Um, so even though I wasn't conscious of the fact that this was a health professional that was supposed to be caring for me who wasn't, somewhere along the lines, I realized this was not someone who should be trusted. As I got older, I would go to hospitals for like checkups and things of that sort, and it was okay because the um, the pediatrician that I had, she was great. She was a Middle Eastern lady, perfectly fine. After a while, I started to see, brown people in the professional world are safe. They're gonna look up for me. They're gonna watch over me. Now I had some other issues in hospitals previous to my my mid childhood, I guess. But that really didn't count. I saw brown professionals, as someone that I could trust. So brown being, either African American, brown being, Indian from India, brown being Latin American. You know, they were just brown. They may not have been a U.S. citizen or a U.S. born person, but they were brown, and I trusted them. You know, when they came in to see me, they came in with a smile. They said, "Hi, Sonia, how are you?" Now, sure, I was a kid, but they're like, "Hi, Sonia, how are you? How's school? How's blah, 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 blah." They would make little jokes and stuff like that. And I understand when you're a pediatrician, you kind of have to do those things, but they just seem really genuine about it and happy to see me. Um, as time went on, I found that whenever I had a non brown or black doctor, that they weren't as friendly. They may come in, they of course they say hi, they introduce themselves, but they didn't seem happy to see me. And that's still when I was still getting a pediatrician. So I was still a child, but they would come in, they wouldn't be happy to see me. They wouldn't make jokes, they wouldn't do anything. They would just be kind of bland. So I found myself naturally, you know, relating more to the brown doctors because whether they were black or some other form of brown, they were friendly with me. They played, they communicated, they had really good characters. Um, and what else happened? So that's kind of the thing. I would book brown doctors. Brown doctors would be nice to me whenever they're out of town or something like that. And I got a non-brown doctor. They would just treat me like nothing. They wouldn't be personable. They wouldn't do anything. They just weren't good to me. So whenever I could, I would request like, do you have a certain person that you want to schedule with? Um, and I would be like, yeah, I want so and so, or I want so and so, I want so and so. And whenever so and so couldn't be there, I just wouldn't go to the appointment because I didn't want to have to go and be next to the person who didn't seem pleasant. Um, and at first, I didn't realize that it was necessarily the fact that they were brown or black or white. But then over time, it started to become clear. I also had something similar in school, but I'm not going to talk about my school experience right now. That might be for next week. We'll see. So yeah, the brown people, the black people, I completely trusted in the medical field. But as I got older, I learned that there was a difference between the brown and black people and the white people. It was extremely clear. Um, so I was about 16 or 17, I think. And I went for just a checkup physical or whatever. I think I was gonna go skiing or play some type of I don't know. I might have been going off for the golf team or skiing or something like that. Um, and I told the doctor, who wasn't my doctor, he was a stand-in doctor, that I was going off for the golf team or skiing or something like that. And he was like, "Oh, I didn't know you people did that. I didn't know you people did that. So black people don't golf or ski. Is that what you're saying? I didn't know you people did that." That's the response I got. That's the response I got from a white doctor who was not my primary doctor that I saw. That's the response I got. I didn't know you people did that. And from that moment on, I said, yeah, there's a clear difference between the black doctors and the white doctors because even a doctor, if they thought that, they would never vocalize it. And because I was so young, I felt like nobody would believe that I told them what what was said. So I didn't say anything. It wasn't until I was about 20 that I started vocalizing stuff. But let's continue. So I'm around 19, almost 20. I told you guys my story of my first love. Um, not the one in high school, but after high school, my real first love. The guy that I was in love with. Um, so yeah. Prior to then, I never saw a gynecologist because I wasn't having sex. They said to only see the gynecologist and get a checkup when you start having sex, and so I wasn't having sex. I didn't go see a gynecologist. But when I did, I went to go see a gynecologist, and it was a family gynecologist. So This person had seen my cousins, my aunts, my the people close to me. And so I trusted them. And they just so happened that they were a black OBGYN. And that was great. But this one time in particular, um, there was a guest gynecologist. And having that incident in mind where the doctor said, I didn't know you people did that in high school, I made it known in my head that I was only going to see black gynecologists. Um, and also because I had freshly lost my virginity, um, I didn't want a whole bunch of people seeing me naked in those parts. Like I mentioned before, I was extremely modest, extremely modest. I was a button up to like my chin modest. I was a skirt below my knee modest. Like, sure, I had sex and I should have been comfortable being naked in front of a male, but I wasn't comfortable even when I was having sex. So to have another male see my everything was kind of personal for me. First off, I don't know why I kept having male gynecologists. Maybe because I didn't put a preference on my stuff. I don't know. But I just I didn't want another man seeing my parts like that. So when I scheduled the appointment, I don't know if they told me that I had a I don't know if they told me that I had another, what is it? Another doctor or not. I don't know. I just know that I scheduled the appointment. And so I scheduled the appointment. And when I get there, the nurse comes in, they're like, "Oh, your doctor will be with you," like regular. And when the guy came in, he was an Asian guy. Now, I haven't really had much experience with Asians at this point. Now, of course, I have experience with them now because I'm in the massage field, and why wouldn't they be massage therapists that are Asian? But I didn't have too much experience with Asians, but I just knew that the white people, the white doctors in particular, we're not going to even talk about the things I've experienced in school. The white doctors in particular did not treat me well. Not when I was younger, not when I was in, high school. So now that, I'm in college and massage school and working, I definitely don't think that they're going to treat me well. Or anyone that is not black or brown will treat me well. Now, like I said, I didn't discriminate against people. It wasn't a matter of, oh, you hate him because of his race. Oh, you hate him because he looks like this. It wasn't that. It was simply that I built a trust with people that were black and brown. They didn't even have to be African American. They could be Jamaican. They could have been from Trinidad. They could have been from Brazil. They could have been from Sudan. They could have been from South Africa. They could have been from Sierra Leone. They could have been from Lebanon. As long as they were brown or black, I was comfortable with them. Even if I couldn't understand a single word they said, I was comfortable with them. But it was just the fact that one, he was a male. I wasn't trying to have another male look at my parts. I already had one doctor look at my parts. I don't need two, especially being a male. I didn't want to spread myself out like that. I was really modest. So he was a male, and then he wasn't black or brown. There was the two things that made me super uncomfortable, because I didn't want to open myself up literally and be vulnerable like that with somebody I didn't know and somebody I didn't trust. That's an extremely intimate place for me. So I did something that to this day, I feel like I'm still paying for. I basically asked if my other OBGYN was there. I said, hey, I kind of cut him off because he was asking me all this stuff or what's going on and all this stuff. He asked me like, what did he say? He was like, what's going on? Tell me why you're here, all the stuff like that. And I said, excuse me, I'm sorry, I don't mean to be rude, but is my doctor coming? Did he cancel? And he's like, oh, you scheduled with me today. And I'm like, oh, is there a way that I can schedule with him? And he's like, so you don't want me to be your doctor? I said, well, I'm just used to, him being my doctor. And the guy was like, but you've only seen him once. I was like, yeah, but he's kind of a family doctor. He's so and so's doctor, and he's so and so's doctor, and I've been recommended by so and so. And he's like, okay, I understand. So he left, and that was the end of that conversation. And the nurse came in, and she was like, "Oh, your appointment went fast. Is everything okay?" And blah 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 blah. I'm like, "Yeah, everything's fine." Um, and she's like, "Well, let me see what the doctor said." So she goes out for like a good 20 minutes. She comes back and she's like, "Oh, you canceled the appointment. That's why he left. You weren't done with your whatever." I said, "No, I didn't cancel it. I just asked if my doctor was there." And he said no. And so she's like, "Okay, if you want to reschedule, you can do this." And she was just really rude. I'm like, I'm sorry. Was there another way that I was supposed to say that I'm uncomfortable? Like, either way. Um, that was my experience there, as far as the treatment and that. Um, yeah. So fast forward, I don't go back to the OBGYN until maybe a year later. I get a checkup. Sometime around there, I have a miscarriage. Um, but that's about it. I go in for the miscarriage. I didn't even realize I had a miscarriage, so it's not something that was traumatizing, but I had it and life went on. Um, then let's say 3 years later, I got pregnant, and this is with my husband's child. That's before we got married, actually. So I got pregnant, and I said, well, I guess I have to go back into the gynecologist, go back to see the gynecologist. At this point, I hadn't been back for a while because I didn't need to, and I'm not gonna waste money for a checkup when I don't need one. Was my thoughts. So I go see the gynecologist, and once again, it's a male gynecologist, and I'm like, I don't want to be here, but I need to be here, so fine, just check me. And I say it just like that because I wasn't I like at this point, I'm a little bit older, a little bit more experienced, and I'm not as modest, but I'm still not like let the whole world see our JJ. But I'm just like, okay, fine, whatever. I'm just having really smart remarks. I'm not so pleasant. This guy jams this tool into my vagina. He jams it like to the point where I'm like he jams it to the point where he literally tears my vagina a little bit. He jams it in me, and he turns it the wrong way. Like I know he knows how to put the little tool in there to spread you. He jams it in there, and it's turned the wrong way. So I'm stretching. I don't want to say it's because he was white, but anyone who's gone to the gynecologist knows how to put that little stretchy tool, that metal tool inside you. And sometimes people they use a clear one with a light on it. He jammed this metal tool in my vagina. He jammed it in my vagina to the point where after I left, I was sore for about 2 weeks. He jammed it in there. He jammed it as if I was being raped by that thing. He jammed it in there. First things first, anytime you have a gynecologist that is a male, there's supposed to be a female nurse in the room with you. The nurse wasn't there. I'm not going to say that if it was my black gynecologist that I requested, that the nurse would have been there. But normally, when I had gotten seen, the nurse was there. The time when the white gynecologist jammed that tool in my vagina, there was no nurse in sight. Not a single nurse in sight. And I complained. I wrote a letter to the administration. I wrote a letter to patient advocate. I wrote a letter to some other place, and I told them what happened. Someone called me And I told them what happened. They basically said, "Can you explain what happened?" And as I was telling them, they were laughing. I'm not even exaggerating. I exaggerate a lot sometimes, like when I'm trying to be funny. I'm not exaggerating. This woman was laughing, and I could tell she was a white woman from her voice. She is a white woman. She was laughing. So, so I had my exam. I had my exam. We confirmed that I was pregnant, of course. The guy jammed the thing in me. Whatever. I was supposed to be scheduled to have an ultrasound. I think I did have an ultrasound. I'm not sure. Um, about a week later, I started having cramps. Really, really bad cramps. And I didn't really get cramps like that. Like I've been menstruating since I was 11. I never really got cramps. Um, Other people would complain like, "Oh, menstruation sucks. I'm always getting cramps." I never got cramps. So I'm having cramps. So the first thing I do is I call my doctor's office. The doctor's office closed. So I call the nurse on staff and I tell them, "Hey, I'm having cramps and I'm pregnant." And they're like, "Oh, pregnancy cramps are normal. They're most likely implantation cramps." I'm like, "Okay, fine." I wait a couple days. I'm still having cramps. And I called the doctor's office and I can't remember what they say, but I can't get in touch with my doctor. Um and they basically just tell me it's most likely pregnancy cramps. And I say, "No, this isn't pregnancy cramps." And they're like, "How do you know? Have you been pregnant before?" And I said, "Well, I had a miscarriage before, and I didn't. And even when I had that miscarriage, I wasn't cramping like I'm cramping now." And they're like, "Yeah, well, it's implantation cramps. Each pregnancy is different. Blah 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 blah." I said, "Okay, fine." A couple of days go by, and I'm still having cramps. And then I start bleeding. So I'm calling the doctor. I can't get in touch with the doctor. I'm calling the nurse. The nurse is saying it's just implantation bleeding. And I'm like, "No, I am cramping and I'm bleeding and I'm pregnant. I need you to give me something better than this." So I asked to get an appointment. I asked to get an appointment with my doctor immediately because something's wrong with me. I'm cramping and I'm bleeding and I don't think this is healthy. I don't think this is regular implantation, whatever. And they just keep saying, "Oh, well, each pregnancy is different. You're having implantation cramps." And I'm like, "No, I'm not. I know my body." But they're like, "Oh, you can't get an appointment." Like, fine, fine, whatever. So this is 2 weeks after that guy shoved that tool inside my vagina. And so I basically stopped functioning because I know there's something wrong. Um, I stopped functioning. So I don't know if I mentioned, but around around that time, I had lost my grandmother, and she was my best friend. I lost her. She died. Um, It was really interesting because one moment she was fine. She was my grandma. She would be telling me jokes, telling me stories about, her life and things of that sort. And literally within 2 days, she went into the hospital for slipping. I think she slipped down the stairs or something like that. She went into the hospital for her hip. And while she was there, they gave her some medication that messed with her memory. And so they said, oh, she must have dementia or Alzheimer's or something like that. But we're like, she was literally okay 2 days ago. Like, Alzheimer's and dementia doesn't just happen overnight. And they just couldn't explain it and all this stuff. So we ended up putting her in a nursing home. And I would visit her every day. And that's when I first started dating my husband. So for most of the time, I would be at work. After work, I would go visit my grandma. After that, I would visit my soon to be husband. And so of course, we're staying there late. Um, but yeah, my grandma died, and so I was dealing with that. Now I was having cramps and I was bleeding, and I was like, I cannot lose this baby. Next thing I know, my grandpa had a house fire. The power was out. So my grandpa lit a candle. I guess he wasn't paying attention to the candle. The candle got onto the curtain in the bedroom, and it set the bedroom on fire. Um, and somehow, some way, my grandpa got trapped in the house with the house fire, and he died from smoke inhalation, apparently. So I'm at this funeral, like I can't lose this baby, and I stopped functioning. I stopped functioning, no longer functioning. To say I was depressed is the understatement. I couldn't really eat. Sleeping wasn't a thing because I had nightmares. I kept I kept envisioning what my grandpa would look like in the flames. And when I went to sleep, I kept envisioning him in my dreams. So I didn't want to go to sleep because I didn't want to dream of my grandpa dying. And I didn't want to think about my grandma dying. And and I was cramping and I was bleeding, and I would call the hospital and I would call the hospital and I would call the hospital, and they'd tell me the same thing. I can't get an appointment. I'm not experiencing anything. It's just normal. It's normal. It's normal. So I'm laying on the floor, right? Because the bed was too soft. I was in so much pain. The bed was too soft. I needed something hard under me. I literally felt like I wasn't there. Like, you know how some people say they felt like they're having an outer body experience. I felt like I wasn't there. So I needed something hard to lay on to remind myself that I'm still here. I was in emotional pain. I was in physical pain. And I would just lay on the floor for hours. I forgot to mention this little part. The best part was that the same week that my grandma died, I got fired from my job because my job didn't think that I wanted to be there. So I'm jobless. I lose both my grandma, my grandpa, and I might be losing my baby. That's what I had to deal with. And if that wasn't enough, my husband, who was my fiance at the time, was acting up. He was acting up. So I'm like, I don't need this right now. I kept calling the hospital, calling the hospital, calling the hospital, telling them what was happening, calling the hospital, begging to get me an appointment, begging and pleading. So, so what happened? As you might have guessed, I lost the baby. He was only a few months old. Still a fetus, I guess. He could fit in the size of my hand. Think of the Barbie doll, the child Barbie doll. I don't know what the name of the child was. Her name Teresa. So you had the big Barbie doll, the size of the big Barbie doll, then you had the small Barbie doll. That's about the size that my baby was. It literally fit the width of this right here, the width of my hand, because I was holding him. So one day I'm home by myself. I'm still living at my mom's house at this point. I'm home by myself. I'm having severe cramps like I've been having for 2 weeks. I'm bleeding like I've been doing for 2 weeks. And I call my mom and I tell her, I've been bleeding chunks. She's like, what do you mean? I said, I'm bleeding chunks. She's like, chunks of what? Just chunks of blood clots. And she's like, okay, let's go to the emergency room. And I'm like, no, there's no point because I've been calling this hospital. I've been calling, I've been pleading, I've been begging that they get me in. I've been telling them that this isn't normal and they don't care. Now, of course, like I just mentioned, my baby was the width of my hand. Um, because I was on the floor, I had to crawl to the bathroom because I was in too much pain to walk. I crawled to the bathroom just so what's funny was not really funny. My mom had white carpet, so I said I'm not gonna sit here and bleed on my mom's carpet. That's what I said to myself as I was crawling to the bathroom. I'm not gonna sit here and bleed on my mom's carpet. So I make it to the bathroom just in time. As soon as I hit the towel, I feel something falling into my panties, and I know what it is. It's only one thing it could be. It's only one thing it could be. And I reach down, and I feel something warm and wet, and I pull it out, and it's my baby. If I had had someone like a doula, I believe things would have been different. You may say, why is that? Well, for one, people don't like to act up when they have witnesses. They don't, because they know that a witness can back up the story. They can say, yeah, that really did happen. A witness can record what's happening. You know, if one person says one thing happens and no one else sees it, it's kind of hard to believe if they're not credible. Because I'll admit, I was on my black woman stuff. I had an attitude every second of the moment. Every second that I was at the hospital. Every second that I was on the phone, I had a for real attitude. Now some people could say, well, maybe if you didn't have an attitude, blah 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 blah. You can say whatever your excuses are. If I had a doula, somebody to advocate for me, none of this would have happened. I would have a witness for what that doctor did to me. I'm not gonna say that the doctor caused my miscarriage. But I can guarantee that if someone had been in the room with me, that would not have happened. That doctor wouldn't have thought that he could have done that to me. If someone had been in the room with me, if somebody had stood by my side when I was, having cramps, they could have, assisted me. They could have called the hospital for me. Maybe it's just because I had an attitude. Maybe it was. If I had a doula, They would speak on my behalf. They wouldn't have the attitude. They would be thinking clearly. I was literally being flooded with hormones because of my child, and so maybe I had a little bit of attitude. A doula would have saw that I was going through something. They would have assisted me. They would have given me resources. They may have been made an appointment at another hospital for me. I don't know. I wasn't thinking clearly. I was in pain mentally, physically, um, emotionally, in every way possible. Spiritually, I couldn't even pray. I wasn't praying in the moment. I wasn't in the right mindset. A doula would intervene. But that's not why I became a doula. Um, when I got pregnant with my daughter, Chinwei, this was the second pregnancy with my husband. Um, I didn't tell my husband initially because he was acting up. I told you. I felt like that, like around the time where we got engaged, like that was the time when he should have stepped up, and that's the time when I started losing people, and he didn't step up. But around the time I had my daughter, I had to go to see a gynecologist, and it was terrifying. Um, I didn't even go see my normal gynecologist. I just said, I want a woman. 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 And it was a Middle Eastern woman, but she wasn't brown like the ones that I trusted. But I figured she's a woman. At least she won't rape me with a tool. At least she won't violate my vagina. She's a woman. She'll understand. Um, so I saw her. She examined me like normal, and that was about that. Fast forward. Um, fast forward. What happened? I'm trying to remember. So it's time to deliver my daughter. I'm in labor and delivery. Um, when you're in labor and delivery, sometimes you get the doctor that you've seen your whole pregnancy. Sometimes you get other people. So I was seeing a bunch of people, and there was one woman that came in. I'm so glad she didn't deliver my child. Of course, she was a white woman. Um, she had this look of disdain on her face, like she looked like she was pissed to see me, and she gave me really short answers. I would ask her, "Oh, is this normal?" And she'd be like, "Yes, it's normal," or something like that. And I'm like, "This is my first pregnancy. Like, this is the first child that's living. Like, I can ask some questions." And at that time, I was in a little pain, but I wasn't in a whole lot of pain. Um, and she was just snappy. She really wouldn't answer my questions, and she would act like she was super busy. Now I understand, there's a shortage of doctors, but she acted like I was an inconvenient. Like, ma'am, you're getting paid because I'm here. But she was extremely rude. When she checked me, she damn near fisted me. It felt like she purposely was just like going all around my vagina, like she was going like this or something like that. I'm like, ma'am, can you be a little bit gentler? Like, um, but luckily she didn't. She wasn't the one who delivered my baby. When I actually got into the room to deliver my baby, a Middle Eastern woman came in, and I'm so grateful for her. If I could see her every day, all day, I would. She is a lifesaver. Like, I was losing hope in the medical system, and I was pissed, and I was scared. And this woman, she came in, smiled, beautiful smile, and she was basically like, everything's gonna be okay. I was literally sitting in there with my mom, my sister, my husband, and she's like, everything's gonna be okay. And she told me all the answers to the questions that I need to know, and I was so grateful. She even gave me information that I didn't need to know. And you know, most OBGYNs, when you're in the room trying to dilate, they leave the room. And she left the room, but she also came back, and she's like, "Oh, I'm just walking by. I just wanted to check up on you, make sure you're okay." And she did that. Most doctors wouldn't have done that. Um, she went out of her way to make sure I was comfortable because she knew it was my first time delivering. Um, so one thing that happened, um, there was a class of OBGYNs, and or residents, I guess they were called, and they asked if they could watch me give birth, which I thought that was weird, and I didn't like that. Once again, I told you I was modest, but um, the doctor kind of explained, like, they're learning. This is a teaching experience for them, and it would help if you did this, and blah 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 blah. And because she said it so nicely, I said, okay, fine. If it was anybody else, I'd be like, no, no, they can't. I was super modest at the time, and I would say no, heck no. But she's super nice. Like, out of all the doctors there, out of all the nurses there, she was super nice. Like, she seemed like she loved her job. She had a good day or something. She was wonderful. And none of the other doctors that I saw that whole entire pregnancy were as nice as her or as informative as her. So I was glad that she delivered my child. And one thing that I really appreciate about her that I try to tell everyone I can is that when I delivered, she pressed down on my labia. I don't think it's my labia. She pressed down. I can't remember the term, but it's like the little part that makes a V. She pressed down here, as my daughter was coming out, and so my daughter just kind of slid out, and I didn't tear at all. Um, and it was great, and it was great. The only thing that I didn't like was that after I had my daughter, they made me go into a shower. Um, they said because I didn't tear, I could go into the shower. And normally, when you have a child vaginally, they'll pour like a a big bowl of hot water to rinse off any blood and to disinfect or whatever. Um, and then they would spray a numbing spray to stitch you up, but I didn't have any tears. But they just told me to go to the shower and rinse myself off. Also, they told me to pee, which hurt like heck. And I was like, yeah, I don't really feel like I have to pee. I peed, and it was terrible. It was the worst pee. But at that point, my doctor had left. Honestly, I feel like if the doctor had stayed, they would have used a big bucket of water to pour and rinse me off. Um, because that's what's supposed to happen. I found that out in my second pregnancy after I had my son, that that's what's supposed to happen. I'm not supposed to take a shower like immediately. I'm supposed to have that bucket poured to rinse all the gooey, yucky stuff off. Anyway, so that was my first experience. Um, the When my son was born, I didn't have any health insurance. So I had to pay to see my OBGYN. So I paid, well, first off, I didn't know I was pregnant until I was 5 months pregnant. I went into the doctor, I think in December, and they told me that I wasn't pregnant. Like, I thought, like, maybe I'm pregnant. I went in there and they said I wasn't pregnant. I was like, okay, fine, fine, whatever. Luckily, I don't drink and I don't smoke and I don't do like things that pregnant women shouldn't do. So when I found out I was pregnant 5 months, I said, I already went to the doctor to see if I was pregnant. They said no. Mind you, when I went to the doctor to see that I was pregnant, if I were pregnant, it was also with a Caucasian OBGYN. And I'm not trying to say that they're against me or anything. It just so happens that that's the trend. Um, anyway, um, so when I found out that I'm pregnant late in my pregnancy. So, the OBGYN's like, how did you not know? Once again, it's a Caucasian OBGYN. They're like, how did you not know that you're pregnant? You're 5 months pregnant, blah, 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 blah. And then I said, you know what? Actually, I kind of want a midwife. And so, they gave me a midwife, and I never see her. I never see her. I maybe saw her twice. But I didn't have insurance, so I was paying every time I went. I may have, I saw her, like I said, I may have saw her twice. I may have went to OBGYN maybe less than 10 times after figuring out that I was pregnant because I was paying out of pocket. And I was just like, the baby's going to be fine. Like, plenty of people, don't find out they're pregnant until later on and their baby's healthy. And like I said, I didn't do anything that pregnant people shouldn't do. So I felt like I was good. I kept taking my prenatal vitamins, even when, um, even when I don't want to say, even after I had my daughter, I still kept taking my prenatal vitamins, so I still had that in my system. Anyway, so I go into to my appointments, and my OBG my midwife is Caucasian, and I'm trying to, because I know that I have a slight, uh I don't want to say a bias, but I just prefer, you know, um brown healthcare providers. I say, I'm gonna take a chance on this Caucasian midwife. She's a midwife after all. She's not trained like the doctors. Maybe she doesn't have this bias. Maybe her instructors weren't racist pricks. Um, maybe this should be an experience that I open my mind up to. Maybe this experience will change my mind on everything. And it wasn't. She was just as cutthroat and short tempered as the other people. Once again, she said, "How could you not know that you were pregnant? Babies move and all this stuff." And I said, "Well, I didn't feel them. I'm a little bit bigger. I didn't see it." And then they were like, "But you didn't have any morning sickness?" And I said, "No, I didn't really have morning sickness with either one of my pregnancies." She's like, "Well, you had to have something." And it's like, I didn't. And she was just so snappy. And I was like, okay, this is not an experience I want. And you're not a doctor. So I really feel like you should, she's a holistic professional. She's a midwife. Like, I have this view of midwives, and she just didn't need it at all. Um, so let's fast forward. It's the day that I'm supposed to be delivering. At this point, me and my husband are separated. I call him, I let him know that I'm in active labor, and I think I was, what, 7 centimeters dilated or something like that. I don't know. I was 7 or 8 centimeters dilated for a few hours, but I told him like, "Hey, I'm at the hospital. I'm this amount of dilated, whatever, whatever." My sister was, I don't want to say she cursed me out, but she's basically like, if your husband doesn't want to come and be with you while you're laboring, you need to leave him and all this stuff. And I'm like, yeah, but whatever, whatever. Once again, I mentioned me and my husband were having some issues. We're still having some issues, but at least we're living under the same roof now. Um, but my sister's basically like, he's not coming to see his child being born. F him, blah 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 blah. And I'm like, please, I don't need this right now. So my sister leaves me. She leaves me in the hospital while I'm in labor. My husband's not there, and I'm there with doctors whom I do not, nor have I ever trusted. What can go wrong? So I asked for some water. They don't give me water. Um, I ask if I try to get up to go to the bathroom, and they say, "Oh, you shouldn't be standing." So I sit back down. And I'm like, "Well, can I get something to use the restroom in because I have to go?" And they're like, "No, we can't give you a bedpan, and you can't go to the restroom." Mind you, another white person is saying this to me. It just so happens that they're white. Like, I don't know if they're like all against me. If they came together in a room, they said, "Hey, if you see her, like treat her like shit." Like, I don't know what happened, but they're like, "No, you can't stand. No, we can't bring you a bedpan." And I'm like, "So you want me to just piss on myself?" And they said, "Well, you shouldn't have to piss on yourself because you haven't been drinking anything." And I'm like, what sense does that make? I still have fluid in my body. Like, it's gonna come out some way or not. Anyway, I end up just pissing on myself. And I'm like, okay, after that, I don't care. These aren't my sheets anyway. So I pissed all over the sheets, all over the sheets. And I was having contractions anyway, so it probably would have been hard to get to the toilet. I just pissed on myself. And one of the nurses came in and she's like, "Did you urinate on yourself?" I'm like, "Yes, the nurse told me not to stand up." And she walked out of the little triage prenatal area laughing. I'm like, okay, fine. Y'all laugh it up. I'm sitting in here in labor by myself. My sister's gone. My husband's not here. I don't have nobody with me. So, of course, they're going to, do some stuff. So the labor goes on a little while. My sister comes back and she's just like, your husband's still not here. I called him and blah, blah, blah. And he has all these excuses for why he can't come. Now, as I told you guys before, my husband works a 12-hour shift most days. But because we were separated, he really just didn't care. He didn't necessarily want me to have a second child so soon. Um, but we didn't use protection, so and he was having other issues, so he wasn't trying to come to the hospital. He wanted to take a nap after work, and I was trying to get him to come in. And I told him, like, you can sleep at the hospital, but I need somebody here with me. Anyway, my sister came back and I was laboring. And as soon as my sister came in, the nurse brought me some water. But because, like always, I don't trust hospitals, I don't trust doctors, I don't trust nurses. They brought it in a foam cup with the top on it. And first off, the water didn't feel cold. So, I'm doing this before I put a straw in it. I take the top off, and there's like a bunch of dirt and dust and lint in this water. In the water. Like some's floating and then some's at the bottom. Like somebody swept some dust into the cup and put water in. I'm like, what in the F? And so I don't drink it, of course. And at this point, I'm thinking, like, these people are against me. Now, this is before I got sick and started being paranoid, but legit, these people are against me. And, yeah, fast forward, um, I don't see any doctors, I don't see any nurses. Um, I'm having contractions, nobody's coming in. My sister's like, hey, can we get an ice pack? Hey, can we get a hot pack? And they're like, sure. 2, 3 hours go by, nothing. Um, Finally, it's time for me to deliver. And they're like, so we're gonna move you to this room so we can prepare you to deliver and all this stuff. Most of the women that were there got moved with the wheelchair. And so I'm thinking I'm gonna sit in a wheelchair and go to my room like everybody else. But no, I'm walking. They're like, okay, come on. I'm literally having these intense contractions. I can barely walk. And one of the nurses rushes over. She's like, "Why are you walking? You in a wheelchair?" And I'm like, "No, I'm fine because I already been walking." Like one nurse didn't offer me a wheelchair at all. The other one's rushing over like, "Oh, why are you walking?" Anyway, so I walk to the room, and as I'm walking, I'm pissing all over myself, and I'm like, "F them. I don't care. I'm in pain. You should have let me use the bathroom." And so then I start doing some hip rolls on the floor. Don't ask me how I got on the floor. I started doing some hip rolls on the floor because that helps the baby get down a little bit, and it felt better. And one of the nurses starts talking about me, and she's like, "What is she doing? Is she dancing? She must not be in pain." And I was in a lot of pain. I told you I was eight centimeters for about 2 hours. I was in a lot of pain, but she's like, "Is she dancing?" She's like, "Ah, blah 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 blah." So I get on the finally. They're like, "Okay, we need you to get on on the bed so we can check you and all this stuff." Once again, white people. This woman jams her hand in my vagina so hard, so hard. She rams it. I'm like, this is the male OBGYN all over again. This is some crap. And it was just stupid. It was stupid. Um, it was stupid. So Finally, the midwife and the staff, they come into the room. They ask me, um after they jam their hand at me, they ask me, how I'm progressing, stuff like this, and they just walk out of the room. They don't do anything else. I don't see them for I don't know how long I was sitting in there, but I don't see them. I don't see a nurse. um I do have a bathroom there, so I go to the bathroom. That's about it. That's it. um my sister leaves to call my husband and tell him about himself, so I'm in the room by myself, just me and my unborn child, laboring by ourselves. I have nursing and midwives who ignore me and laugh at me and mistreat me. And I have my sister who's cursing out my husband, my mom who's watching my child, and I'm just sitting there by myself. And I'm thinking, like, I wish there was somebody here with me. And I was thinking, I should have had a doula. A doula would have been here. Not only would the doula have not allowed me to have a cup full of lint as water, she would have helped me to the bathroom. She would have brought an ice pack and a hot pack to put on me. She would have called my husband for me, if I had to do it. And I was just thinking about that. And so as labor progressed, I feel the need to push. And so I called the nurses and I'm like, hey, I think he's coming. And they stay exactly where they are. They don't call my midwife. They don't talk to each other. They just stay exactly where they are. I'm like, okay, I had this baby by myself. Like, I wanted an unassisted home birth. Like, let me have this unassisted in the hospital. I don't care. Um, but yeah. um, so I start pushing. I'm like, okay, we're gonna get him out. And I don't know if he was crying or what. I tried to check myself, but I was in so much pain to actually reach down there. And you got to get your arm up so high in your vagina to feel the head, and I couldn't do it. Um, he wasn't crowning. That's all I know because I had my hand like at the edge of my vagina. I'm like, he's not crowning because I would feel him. I'm like, so why do I feel like the need to push? So I just try to breathe, try to remember the breathing and stuff like that. And so my sister's there and she's on the phone with my mom. My mom's like, so does Sonya have her baby yet? And as she's saying this, the nurse and the midwife come in and they say, oh, she's pushing. And they start setting the bed up like a pushing station because it's like a transformer bed. And as my mom saying, hey, does she have a baby yet? I pushed my son out. Two pushes. No, I think it was three pushes. My daughter was two pushes. Um, and I tear, like, I tear terribly. The doctor baby barely did anything. I tore terribly. Um, like I said, with my Middle Eastern OBGYN who delivered my daughter, who did a perfect job. She held down the V. I don't know what this part is called, and I feel bad for not knowing because I'm a doula, but she held down the V like this. As my daughter's head was coming out, she basically slid out, no tears, not a single tear, nowhere. Um, with this midwife who I told you had neglected me, um, I tore. She is barely there to catch my son. Like she just so happened to be there. Like she just so happened to be there to catch him. And when she did, she just threw him on me. Like most moms, most people, they would take the baby and go like this. She went like this, like legit, baby in the air for a couple of seconds. Like you can abuse me if you want to, but when you start messing with my kids, you're asking for death. um, but yeah, I tore from my vagina to my anus. It was a it was a terrible tear. And they didn't spray any antiseptic on me, not a little bit. They didn't spray anything, no antiseptic on me. Um, and the lady pretending like she did. She said, like, "Oh, does this hurt?" And she rubbed it, and I'm like, she's like, "Does this hurt?" I'm like, "You didn't spray anything." She's like, "No, I did." I said, "No, you didn't." First off, I can see the bottle. It's not even in your hand. So, mistrust of the healthcare system. That's me. Mistrust of white people. I gotta tell you my in school incidents, and you might understand better. So the mixture of my in school incidents and then actually being in the healthcare system with certain people cause me to mistrust them. They have yet to earn my trust. Now, I'm not saying this is all people of a certain race because that's what racist people do. They first put themselves above that race and then they say all the reasons why they don't like them, and then it becomes hate. I don't have hate in my heart for anybody. I have mistrust for people. I have dislike for people, and I can dislike people and mistrust them. Now, I understand God died for them sins too. Jesus died for their sins too, and God loves them. Great for them. That doesn't mean that I have to love them. Now, God wants me to love them, but it's a want. It's a request. It's not. It's not a do this or go to hell. It's a He wants me to love them, but whatever. So that's how I distrust the healthcare system. Now, throughout the story, I've mentioned where I could have used a doula at. So, being in the hospital while my sister was cursing out my husband, I could have used a doula. um, Pissing on myself because the nurse said it wasn't healthy for the baby for me to go to the bathroom, even though I've been going to the bathroom my entire pregnancy. I could have used a doula to say F that and help me to the bathroom. I could have used a doula all throughout the laboring process. Honestly, I wanted an unassisted home birth. I could have just stayed where I was at and did a home birth, um, because my midwife ignored me. And I'm not saying if it was a black midwife would they have done the same. I don't know. After all, it's a hospital setting. If you're gonna have a midwife in a midwife setting, like a birthing center or a home. When they are at a hospital, they have to do what the hospital tells them to do, as if they were nurses or I don't want to say doctors, but they have to do what the hospital says they have to do. The same protocols. Ultimately, if something were to happen at the hospital, they would have treated it with the OBGYN and most likely medical intervention and surgeries. They didn't do anything. They literally neglected me. The woman that was supposed to be there to care for me barely cared for me at all. Barely. And now that I think back, I should have kicked her in the face. Um, because she smiled when I was in pain. That's why. That's the only reason why I say that. She smiled when I was in pain. Um, Anywho, so I decided I wanted to become a doula because I've been through the worst of it. I've had a miscarriage um, that could have been prevented. I had a great OBGYN who delivered my child without tearing, so I could give, advice on how not to tear. I know exactly what she did so that I didn't tear, which was awesome. Um, I know different labor physicians that helped me because I was laboring alone. I was in the room by myself. I had to figure out some ways to sit. I know, what was it? There's just a lot of reasons why I feel like doulas are needed, and I feel like with my experience in birthing and with my experience in loss and with my experience in having my children, having a child at home while I have a newborn, I feel like I have a lot of information I could share. Plus, because after these incidents, I looked up medical interventions and what OBGYN should do in certain situations and what they shouldn't do. And I feel like I have a lot of resources because I don't ever want another woman to experience what I've experienced. And if I have the power, I'll do everything I can to make sure that nobody else experiences this. Um, yeah. So that's why I became a doula. I don't want anybody to experience what I experienced under any circumstances. It was stupid and it's neglect on their part. And like I said, each time an incident occurred, I told the administration what happened. And I know this may sound paranoid because it might be, um, but I think that they did it on purpose. And I'm just going to put it out there. We all know that there are Black maternal um, health disparities. We all know that Black women die more in hospitals than white women. We all know that Black infants die more than white infants. And yes, racism plays a part in this. Bias plays a part in this. It plays a part. Now you can think however you want to think. I don't care what your background is. I don't know. I don't care about what experiences you had personally. I've I've lived through it. My first fetus died through it. You can think what you want. But that's my experience on why I don't care for the healthcare system and and why I became a doula. So here's your answer.